The deaths of children at the hands of their parents are always shocking. The idea of killing them due to faith, hiding the bodies, and gaining financially is hard to comprehend. Sadly, that appears to be what happened in this Chad Daybell true crime story. Today, we're going to take a closer look at the events surrounding this murder investigation and the heartbreaking case of the deaths of these children. The man facing death on 3 counts of murder is their stepfather, the leader of a doomsday cult. However, it seems as though he may not be as fully to blame as it seems. Let's look at the murders, the cover-up, and the additional culprits in this solved crime. The murders of Chad Daybell's stepchildren. Let's start with the underlying crime before we get into any of the weirder aspects of Daybell's beliefs. At its base level, this is a murder investigation revolving around the deaths of some of Chad Daybell's stepchildren, only it's not that simple. To better understand Chad and his crimes, we have to look at the woman he married, his apparent accomplice in everything, Lori Vallow Daybell. Lori had been married a few times with children from multiple relationships. At the time of meeting Chad, she had 2 children in her care. They were a 16-year-old daughter named Tylee Rand and an adopted son, 7-year-old Joshua Jackson, better known as JJ. Tylee vanished on September 9th, 2019, and the same happened to her adopted brother a couple of weeks later, on September 23rd. Family members and the local authorities grew suspicious and fearful as the children failed to show up. The pair were uncooperative when faced with a request to see the children and claimed they were fine and undergoing homeschooling. That November, the couple fled to Hawaii and got married, distancing themselves from Idaho as best they could. Investigations found that by this point, they were claiming to be childless. They stated that fact on their housing application and told new friends that Lori's daughter had recently passed away. Those Hawaii friends had no idea just how recent that was and the parts Chad and Lori played in the incident. Eventually, the authorities located the children's remains on Chad's former property in Idaho. They were in unmarked shallow graves in an area the family referred to as the pet cemetery. Chad was at the premises at the time, already aware of the police warrant and impending search. Once the police located the children, he tried to flee the scene and failed. Tylee was found charred and with her hands missing. Further examination found injuries consistent with attempts at further dismemberment. Joshua J. had a plastic bag and duct tape over his mouth and had wooden stones covering the gravesite. What was now clear was the children were never missing, never homeschooled, and had instead been murdered. Someone, presumably Chad and/or Lori, had killed them. The couple then concealed the evidence and remarried while pretending the children were still alive. The police arrested both on charges of concealing evidence and suspicion of murder. The question that remained was why, and that's where the story takes an even darker turn. Keep watching to see how this twisted couple used their faith to justify their actions. You won't believe what they thought was about to happen to those kids. We'll also go deeper into their lies and crimes and try to determine who was most to blame here. Was it Chad, Lori, or someone else? As always, if you're enjoying this true crime story, we'd appreciate it if you give the channel some love with a like and a subscribe. Chad Daybell and the Doomsday Cult. A significant part of the media reports about this case lean into the apparent motive for the children's deaths, and it's easy to see why. There are actually 2 sides to this story, one extreme and one a little more mundane. The former is the more interesting but feels like a cover for the latter. This murder investigation fascinates people because of the term doomsday dad. To be honest, that's what hooked us at first. The idea that people can be so driven by their faith to kill people they love is shocking. That's one proposed reason for what happened. Chad was a religious fanatic with some extreme ideas and openly preached his views to anyone who would listen. Lori became drawn to these ideas and soon enough to the man behind them, leading to their relationship and eventual marriage. Chad Daybell is a Mormon and a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Over time, his views expanded into more dangerous territory, and he developed what many call a doomsday cult. He claimed he'd seen visions of the past and future and could predict the end of the world. He claimed the world would end in July 2020. Clearly, he was as wrong about that as he was about Utah's destruction by an earthquake. Still, there's no doubt that his life was falling apart by that point. The police found the children in June, and he was facing trial for their murders. And then there's Lori's role in all this. Lori bought into the idea in a shocking fashion. Chad saw her as a wife from a past life. which is one way to try and justify an affair if Lori kind of had him first. He also helped her see herself as a god, or at least a vessel of God on earth. And she began to believe she would be pivotal in the events of July 2020. There was no place in this mission for family, Chad Daybell, and the zombies. The next part is where things get even more disturbing. Chad Daybell also believed he could see the undead. This wasn't a sixth sense style of awareness of spirits or seeing ghosts. This was the notion that the dead were walking among the living as zombies. One story states that it was this psychosis that led Chad to kill the children or conspire with others to kill them. Text messages found by the FBI spoke of a plan to take the children because of this belief. That's the extreme motive for these deaths. The idea that Chad and Lori were so convinced of their duties and the threat of zombies that the children had to die. If they truly believed in all this, then they would have felt justified in their actions, as they were saving their children or protecting others. I don't know about you, but I don't buy the idea that they honestly believe this. For a start, the idea is a brilliant way to plead insanity and get a lesser charge. Second, they had a far more sinister plan in motion. The more the police and prosecution dug around into the Daybells' motives, the more they found. Records showed the pair wanted the children out of the way to continue their relationship. They also sought to gain from the children's Social Security payments the children got from the deaths of their fathers. The children experienced a lot of loss and trauma in their lives. A concerning number of Chad and Lori's past spouses ended up dead, which leads us to the final twist in this dark tale. 3 counts of murder? Now, you may have come to this point in today's true crime story and realized that the math doesn't add up. In the intro, I said that Daybell faced 3 counts of murder, but we've only got 2 bodies so far, Tylee and JJ. That's because Chad Daybell is also accused of the murder of his first wife, Tammy Daybell. If you thought the timing of Chad and Lori's marriage was strange, it gets worse. It happened 2 weeks after Tammy's death and a hefty $430,000 life insurance payout. Authorities began connecting dots and following up hunches and decided to exhume Tammy's body. There was evidence of asphyxiation. Furthermore, there was a police report from just before Tammy's death. Someone threatened her with what she believed was a paintball gun. This was later found to be an AR-15, but we'll get into that shortly. The trials of Chad Daybell and Lori Daybell. By the time the case went to trial, Chad Daybell's defense team felt they had a decent case to present to the jury. A key aspect was the fact that there was no DNA evidence linking Chad to the bodies when they were discovered. There were, however, pieces of DNA from another man, Alex Cox. Alex was Lori's brother, and some believe in his involvement in some way. Alex had a long history with Chad and Lori and ties to not only the deaths of the children, but also those of Tammy and Lori's ex-husband. Alex attacked Lori's former husband, Joseph Ryan, in 2007 over claims of abuse of child sexual abuse. Ryan died in 2018, and questions were later raised about Alex and Lori's involvement there. After Tammy's death, the police found a gun in Alex's home resembling the one mentioned by Tammy after that attack. There was also a series of internet searches on using an AR-15 and on how a Grendel round would impact a Dodge Dakota, which was Tammy's car. While prosecutors can't say that Alex Cox asphyxiated Tammy, he was at the scene and quite possibly asphyxiated the children too. His DNA was at the scene, and his GPS placed him there on the suspected day of the burials. Meanwhile, Lori faced her own trial for the murders and concealment of evidence. Her statements support the idea that she was so deep into her religious fanaticism that she couldn't distinguish right from wrong. The following statement says a lot. Jesus Christ knows that no one was murdered in this case. Accidental deaths happen, suicides happen, fatal side effects from medications happen. She's proclaiming her innocence and insisting the children died some other way, seeming at peace with what happened. This is supported further by her notion that the children were happy and extremely busy in heaven. She mentions Tammy as experiencing the same fate, which raises questions about the last part of that statement, fatal side effects from medication. It's oddly specific. Chad Daybell gets the death penalty. At the end of their respective trials, Chad and Lori received their sentences for their part in these crimes.
Chad Daybell was convicted of 3 counts of first-degree murder, insurance fraud, and conspiracy to commit murder and grand theft in connection to the 2019 killings of his wife, Tammy Daybell, 7-year-old J.J. Vallow, and 16-year-old Tylee Ryan. Prosecutors plan to seek the death penalty. The sentencing phase of the case will take place later this afternoon in Boise, Idaho. Daybell is married to Lori Vallow Daybell. She's already serving a life sentence without parole on similar charges.
They are guilty on all counts, with the jury convinced that both Chad and Lori actively sought to kill the children, cover up their crimes, and profit from what happened. For Lori, this meant a life sentence without the possibility of parole. She will most likely remain in prison, serving out her terms for the rest of her life. It was a different result for Chad Daybell. He instead faces death. The harsh nature of the sentence and the fact that Lori didn't receive the same has many questioning whether justice was served here. There is no doubt that Chad Daybell shares the blame for what happened to the children, but is it enough to deserve death while his accomplice lives? There is a theory that Chad is more innocent than we're led to believe because of Lori's admissions and the DNA evidence against Alex Cox. Let's say that the evidence placing Alex at the scene of all 3 deaths shows that he was the killer, and Chad and Lori merely encouraged him to do so. Is that worthy of the death penalty? Also, what if Lori was the mastermind, as Chad's other children suspect, and he was coerced into having the children and his wife killed to serve her desires? Chad Daybell has 5 adult children from a previous relationship, and they have since openly supported their father. They are certain he wasn't to blame due to the lack of DNA evidence and the way the police discovered the children. They point out that Chad was a gravedigger at one point, giving him knowledge of how to bury a body. They say that had Chad killed the children and disposed of them, he would have known better than to create such shallow graves. Honestly, it's not the best defense because it assumes the culprit had the time and care to do a good job. Also, creating a shallow grave could have been a way to throw the police off the scent of his guilt. It also doesn't exonerate Chad from the accusation of arranging the killing. It's possible that Chad's doomsday ideas and belief in zombies were a real psychosis, and Lori took advantage of that. Yet, it still feels like she was the one taken advantage of. He brought her into his cult, convinced her of their past life, and ran away with her to marry and start a new life. Chad was the one running from the scene of the crime when the police found the bodies. Sadly, this feels like a true crime story that will never have a satisfactory conclusion. If Alex Cox is the murderer, the killer for hire, if you will, everything he knew died with him in 2019. Everything that Chad Daybell honestly knows and believes will die with him if he is executed for his crimes. And that just leaves Lori left. A woman holding on to her extreme views and justifications until she decides to change her story. It's doubtful that day will ever come. Was this sentence the right call? There's a lot to unpack with this heartbreaking case, and it feels like this true crime story doesn't have a satisfactory conclusion. There is so much that's left unknown about the murders of all 3 victims in this true crime murder investigation. The sentence for the death penalty means that as time goes by, we will remember Chad Daybell as the man executed for killing his stepchildren. People will forget about Alex Cox and feel sorry for Lori Daybell as she serves her sentence and maintains her delusions. But what if it wasn't Chad? What if his children are right? What if Lori and her brother did coerce him? What if he was only trying to protect his wife from his past life from the end of the world and from paying for her crimes? Sadly, we'll probably never know. And this is where we turn things over to you. As always with these true crime stories, we want to know what you think about this murder case and its outcome. Are you of the opinion that Chad knew exactly what he was doing and was responsible for orchestrating the deaths of his former wife and stepchildren? Or does the majority of the blame lie with the woman who saw herself as that reincarnated deity and had a brother who would support her at all costs? Let us know in the comments section below. We look forward to reading them, and we'll see you again soon with our next true crime video.